Hey guys, welcome back to Tigara Gitana. My name is Abby, and we are going to be going over mutable signs. I'm like butchering all words today. Yeah, so we're gonna be going over mutable signs. It's the last of the three. So I did cardinal and we did fixed, and now it's mutable. So the mutable signs are Pisces, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Gemini. And being a mutable sign really means that you are not necessarily stable, but you also don't necessarily initiate either. It's kind of like being in between fixed and cardinal. So there's a good and bad to mutable signs. There's like an influx of kind of not being centered at times. It's also a good thing to be a mutable sign in ways because you're able to be flexible and kind of bounce back and forth from different places, ideas, situations. You're able to see things from different perspectives. You're able to connect emotionally in ways that people couldn't. And there's also, like, if you look at the 4 different signs, if you take Gemini, for example, Gemini, known as the sign of the twins, in is mutableness. It is also, oh, it is sliding, hold on. Sorry. In it is mutableness, which by the way is probably not a word. I cannot certify that. But it is kind of always changing. And is also kind of, if you're looking at signs like to depend on or like be stable with, having a lot of mutable placements does not necessarily help because they're forever moving. They're like waves that just keep going. It's never like a stay a curve, it just keeps going. It's not it's not like a bad thing, but there are shadow sides to each kind of these things. So for example, if you have if you're like a Pisces, and if you're a Pisces and you're mutable, and like let's say you're going more on the shadow side of what Pisces energy kind of looks like, even though all of it really focuses on intuition, illusion, and emotions, you can really fall into the negative side of illusions for what a Pisces kind of archetype gets into. So for mutable signs, you can go from an influx of seeing things in a completely different way to really seeing things in ways that don't actually exist. So if you're like a Pisces, and again, it's like the 2 fishes, if you're a Pisces and you're kind of in the shadow side of this, you can literally create moments that were never there. You can use your imagination and make things into fact. You can paint beautiful pictures of the world, beautiful pictures of people, but it can create unreal realities, really. And I, don't get me wrong, I love Pisces energy. Got Pisces in the 9th house. Love Pisces energy. But it is, when you're working with like because again, this is a prerequisite to shadow astrology. When you're working with shadow astrology, you kind of have to take a note of how the energy will affect you towards the negative side, because most people don't know how to use their astrological energy on the positive side. So you have to work through the negative to get to the positives of it. So it is good that they're flexible. If you look at, for example, Sagittarius energy is very much, or the Sagittarius archetype very much is about learning. They're very lucky individuals, but they can also get unlucky in their choices and circumstances, because Jupiter not only is a planet of abundance, but he will expand negativity as well. Sorry. So if you're doing shadow side Sagittarius energy and as like a mutable sign, you can get stuck in places, but just as well get out of those because of that luck that you have. But if you don't really do the work and you kind of stay stuck in the shadower side, all those arrows that you're shooting, because you have to remember that Sagittarius is an archer, all the arrows that you're shooting and all those chances and risks, because that's what Sagittarius is about, risk. And really mutable signs really risk a lot. All the arrows that they're choosing can end up biting them in the butt later on some level, shape, form, whatnot, which is not like the funnest experience for them. And they have to kind of go get the lesson and everything and then keep it moving. But they are really about knowledge, travel. That's why they're one of my favorite signs. I mean, I love all the signs, but they're in my top, like, I don't know, 5, I guess. Maybe I'm gonna have to redo my thing. Okay, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, so when it comes to Sagittarius energy, it can really bite you in the butt if you misuse your luck or misuse your power, misuse that ability to shoot arrows and land bullseyes all the time. And that ability of taking risks can't pronounce that today, can get you into a lot of trouble because you never know where it can kind of land you. It might actually land you in the foot of a lesson that you needed to learn. And granted, if you learn it, that's great. But if you're kind of just using your magnetism, because Sagittarius are also very magnetic, to have a toxic backdrop, that does not help your cause. Virgo is probably one of my most, like, oh my god, signs, because they make me laugh. Virgos, as they're a dual sign as well, there's a lot of like duality. There's only Sages are like the only non-dual sign in this whole entire mutable sign business, which is interesting because again, we're talking about not being really stable, being in a flux, and just kind of, yeah, just being really flexible. If you're looking at all of that, it makes sense for like most of the signs that are on here not to be just straight. It has to have some sort of duality to it. And again, when you're dealing with duality, you can either fall to one side or the other, light and dark, all that stuff. So when it comes to Virgos are very interesting to me because you have some Virgos that are very much, they fall in line with their idea of perfection. And so when you have such a high standard for everything, you can really end up being really toxic, because not only will your standard for everybody else be ridiculous, but your standard for yourself will create judgments of yourself that will just be mentally toxic. So when you're doing shadow work with mutable signs, it can be very much a kind of yin and yang type of thing, but it can really fall into you have to kind of keep those areas balanced, and that's really what it is about. I have a Gemini moon, which is fun, but but I also can see where I have way too much going on when I'm trying to do 5 million things, and then I'm just like, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to cook, I also need to do this, I need to write this thing down, and I also need to write this post, and I also need to do this, and then it's like my mind will take over. It's moving way faster than my hands are. And keeping that balanced, because Gemini's, again, air. So then when you're getting into the elements, Virgo will be more stubborn because they're earth. Sagittarius will be way more, again, shooting these arrows because they're fire. They're just ready to like, Pisces will be swimming in illusion, swimming around. And then, Gemini will literally be thinking 5 million things at once. So when you're trying to balance that kind of that energy, you really have to reel yourself back in, work with the element. For me, meditation is my life. If I don't meditate in the mornings, I'm like half a hot mess, because it's just, I can see myself getting frustrated because I'm not able to achieve the million thoughts that I'm having. And as a Capricorn sun, having things to achieve, but having too much thoughts, and then I keep adding stuff to it. I'm like, can I just pause and try first? So that's like a a thing that I do. Like that's a daily thing that I do as far as struggle goes. Though I wouldn't call it a struggle because I actively work on it. And that's ultimately the point of this. You have to actively work with that energy. So if you have, I don't know, like a Pisces moon or whatever, and you're like kind of get lost in the feels, or you block your intuition, because there's Pisces that block their intuition, and and every time I see them, I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? No. If you're a water sign, don't block your power. Please don't. I mean, all of the signs have their own power, but specifically water signs, because you guys do live in the realm of emotions, don't block your power. Intuition is your power. Use that shit. It is sliding again. I'm sorry. Anyway, so back to the point. So yeah, so that's like explain. Doesn't like me today. So that's like the kind of explanation of what a mutable sign is. Different ways to work on it is, again, just seeking balance in those areas, in those specific areas. So for example, if you have a let's see, give me a placement. If you have, for example, your second house of money in Sagittarius, and you really get lucky where you know, take your risk and get your money from, or like the business that you do, or the why am I not getting the word, the connections that you make with people in business or whatnot, as far as like future businesses with them and stuff like that, it is great. But then when you kind of take the shadow side to that, would be like you kind of get too risky, and that risk might actually cost you something because you didn't let it be stable, or you didn't let it kind of have a solid foundation that you can constantly have that money built in, or you're like just trying to do too much where that one idea that you had could really bring you in that abundance in whatever way. If you have, for example, Gemini in the 7th house, which is one of my like favorite things to see in people's charts, just because, again, a lot of people don't know how to work with their own energy. So the way Gemini energy gets used sometimes is that, I mean, there's reasons why they say, oh, Geminis are like, will cheat on you or whatnot. I mean, you have to look at the Venus. I mean, people don't pay attention, but Geminis will cheat on you. Geminis will be like flimsy. They don't know how they feel about you and stuff like that. They have too much stuff going on in their minds. You kind of have to intellectually keep them there to hold on to them in a good way. If you kind of just can't keep up with all of the places where the mind is going, you're just not going to be there. It's kind of like an Aries. If you can't keep up with them, they'll leave you behind real quick. Real quick. But we're going to talk about that when we get into the signs. But with Gemini in the 7th house being the house of relationships, you can see that if it's on the shadow side, you're going to see a lot more, they're very social people. So they'll have many friends, many people that they'll be dating at once, if anything. If you're, it is sliding again. I'm sorry. They'll be dating multiple people. They'll be like, if they're kind of bored of you or something, they'll like, you know, they could even leave without telling you. There's like ways, you know, there's too much for a Gemini to do in a day. Ultimately, sometimes they'll just forget to even tell you they thought that they did already somewhere in the many thoughts. So there's different ways to kind of use the energy, but Gemini in the 7th can also be a really great thing, because then you'll pull in partners that will intellectually stimulate you and will kind of keep that going. And we're also going to get into that when we get into the houses in astrology. So yeah, so I hope this video was helpful as far as mutable energy goes. And if you guys have any questions, you can email me, or and all my links will be like down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe and everything. And yeah, that was it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and stay blessed.